We wanted to talk about Rivals Week because it's a series of these really fun national TV games that the NBA thought would be the best rivalries to, bring in the casual fan. These entertaining games between two teams that presumably hate each other and would play hard against each other, etc. Ideally, the two teams are good. But before we try to rewrite Rivals Week ourselves, Will, I wanted to get your thoughts on the matchups that the NBA chose
hmm
for these games.
We got the Nuggets versus the Sixers on January 21st, and then on January 25th, Nuggets Wolves, who I would definitely say the Wolves are more of a rival than the Sixers. There's really only like an Embiid Jokic rival in regards to the fandom, but
Yeah.
the teams aren't really rivals on the court. So I've always resisted the Sixers Nuggets
Right. We only
rivalry.
get one Jokic and Embiid game per year. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fans who want to see Embiid and Jokic go head to head. I think people are just interested in that. I don't really care about it. Like I don't even think Nuggets fans care about it. I think everyone else outside of Nuggets Nation cares about it more than Nuggets fans. Not that we don't care about it, but I
oh
think
no, Nuggets fans care. I think that Nuggets fans care than like either of the teams or like anybody. Or not Nuggets fans, but Nuggets fans and Philly fans, like you say.
you think that Philly fans and Nuggets fans care more about their head-to-head matchup than most others.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? I was partly drawn into this fandom based on the incredibly toxic nature of the MVP debate in 2023.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
true.
know,
I,
like,
I
y'all can't hide.
Well, I think there's
Okay.
just maybe it's just me, but I think there's been some. I think people have been almost worn down by it to where people have stopped caring as
Oh,
much
yeah.
in terms of comparing them. And
I'm
I
kind
think,
of over it because it's just like there's only one game a year.
hmm
And I think it's more about the fact that like the debate about the quality of the two players themselves is kind of over, like pretty
yeah,
resoundingly. So
yeah,
I don't care anymore. Like I don't
yeah,
need
exactly.
a regular season win for my Jokic resume. I'm
It's
good.
the Sixers fans when people critique Embiid will point to the idea that basketball is a team game, and Embiid's never really had the right team around him. In addition to his
He said great
injuries,
teams. They win lots of regular season games. So I don't know what they're talking about. Like I think he's about to have maybe the best team around him
yeah, I
that
think
he's
so.
had, but that doesn't mean the other teams weren't good or good enough.
This season definitely
Um,
will have less excuses from that standpoint because they got Maxi,
yeah,
they got
you
rid
think
of
so?
Tobias Harris, they added Paul George, so that's like everything the
Yeah.
Sixers fans almost wanted. Maybe there were some who wanted to get more role players instead of just splashing it all on Paul George. Whatever, we'll see how that works out. That said, I don't think it's that compelling of a rivalry from the Nuggets perspective. I think the Wolves are easily the best rival for the Nuggets because they have the Tim Connolly aspect. You have the arguments that the Wolves were built specifically to beat the Nuggets. No matter where you stand on that, that is something in the
But
ether.
you wait a second. Wait a second. You can't just slip that in there. If you don't think that they were, then you can't use that as a reason that that's their best rivalry.
Well, I'm just saying the perception, regardless of if it's true or not, exists.
Okay.
So,
Well, I that is true because part of rivalry week is, creating an air of like these teams hate each other, right? It's a bit of kayfabe, right? Like nobody cares about the Knicks and Nets. Like the Nets have been irrelevant for ever since. I mean, before KD left, right? Like that's why he left. And yet the Knicks and Nets get a game on Rivals Week yet again because it's the two New York teams that hate each other.
it's a
I'm actually
horrible
surprised they didn't
rivalry.
do Lakers Clippers here, but the Lakers already have two other games on Rivals Week. I do think that most of these games are at least okay rivalries. I think the Warriors Kings game is kind of an underrated
Yeah,
cinematic watch.
I like that.
But what I wanted to do right now, Will, was give both of us an opportunity to rewrite Rivals Week in the image of the most cinematic games. So we were going to list the 5 best rivalries in the NBA to put on Rivals Week. So you're going to want to have good teams. You're going to have the games be competitive as much as possible. You want to have the storylines around the two teams be incredibly juiced,
hmm
and then we're going to let the people decide who is good at identifying the most cinematic rivalries in the NBA. Okay. So before I list my top 5, I wanted to give an honorable mention to Pels Grizzlies because the 2 Pels Grizzlies games that I watched last season, which were the 2 that Ja was present for, were absolutely like bonkers, down to the wire. One of them went to OT. Ja had the game winner in one of them. I remember that game came right before a really crazy overtime game with the Warriors and Celtics. But they only get an honorable mention because Zion is almost never healthy for these games, and Ja is off doing God knows what. Maybe we'll get 4 solid Pels Grizzlies matchups this season that will be really entertaining, but I cannot put them on the list for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
All right. My number 5 is going to be Thunder Mavs. Both of these teams are good. Both of these teams, they played a playoff series against each other last year. Luka and SGA were number 2 and 3 in MVP voting. So you've got the individual player juice. The Mavs fan base is a very voracious, so they definitely had to be on this list because you know that they're going to be driving all the agendas and all the storylines online. And I think that that could make for some really fun games. Also, these 2 teams and just tend to play like crazy games against each other. Sometimes it's a blowout, but sometimes it's a game where OKC is up huge. The Mavs go on a 30-2 run, take a lead, and then OKC pulls it off in the clutch somehow. That's just like a thing that happens when these 2 teams play each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, Thunder Mavs.
I'm going to do something with Golden State because while I think that their better days are behind them, I think having Steph in there is fun, but I'm not going to go with Golden State versus Lakers. I'm going to go with Golden State versus Memphis. And
interesting. You know, they had the playoff series.
yeah, I really liked the Golden State Memphis beef. And now you're going to have Ja Morant back. And that rivalry's obviously fizzled out a little bit, but I still like the beef. And
we need more point guard versus point guard rivalries. I just think that, you know, when you have 2 guys where the ball is in their hands all the time, like literally all the time, and they're always initiating the offense. Not necessarily in the case of Steph, but you know, sometimes, and he is the point guard of that team.
And I think
it just makes for more of those like, oh, those moments where like, oh my God, Steph just crossed up Ja and then he buried that jumper in his eye, you know?
And there's some interesting like Jaren Jackson Defensive Player of the Year that maybe was not earned. And Draymond Green's like the gatekeeper of that award all the time.
True. Oh my gosh, that's so right.
I don't know that it'll really work, but I like the idea of that more than like Golden State versus the Lakers personally.
I wonder if Draymond's going to start antagonizing Wemby when he starts becoming the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year.
Maybe he'll be like, yeah, he deserved it. So
we'll see. My number 4, I'm going to go with one that is a newly budding rivalry, but which produced probably, I think most people would agree, the best games of the playoffs. Give me Knicks Sixers.
Ooh.
All of these games were won in the clutch. Every single one of them. It was ridiculous. The Knicks fan base started to turn on Joel Embiid during I think it was game 3 in Philly when he started being ridiculous and like hurting guys, committing flagrant fouls. That was so weird because that first half of that game, I remember talking about it like he was acting like he wanted to get thrown out of that game. And then he decided to like bury 4 jumpers in a row in the 3rd quarter. And then the Knicks were able to somehow claw back, but Philly was able to hold on at the end. But those games were cinematic. You have 2 good coaches in Tibbs and Nurse. And we talked about how like, oh, is Tibbs actually underrated? Like he kind of outcoached Nick Nurse when you think about the caliber of players that the Knicks had relative to the Sixers. You've got Jalen Brunson, who was another MVP candidate. He was 5th on he was 5th in votes there. Fun point guards in him and Maxey, of course. Now the Knicks also have Mikal Bridges, and obviously they had OG as well. I think both of these are good teams in the East, and everybody loves when the Knicks are good. Everybody loves when the Knicks are involved in a rivalry, so much so that they would put the Nets on national television. So I'm going to go with Knicks Sixers here.
Yeah, for my number 4, I'm considering that one, but also Knicks Celtics. Like, are the Knicks going to be good enough to be rivals with Boston? I don't know that it's there. So by that, I'm just going to This isn't that good, but it's only number 4. But I'm going to go with Milwaukee versus Boston.
Interesting.
Two recent teams from the East that won titles. I think still Giannis is good enough and Dame can be good enough if they can just get Middleton healthy and get back to playing well. That might be the most interesting threat. So I could be wrong in terms of what team can threaten the Celtics in the East, but just because you already covered Dick's Philly, I'll go Milwaukee, Boston.
No, I like it. I like it. My next one actually also involves the Bucks. I'm gonna go with Bucks Pacers here because every single Bucks Pacers game in the regular season, when everybody was healthy, came down to the wire. They were incredibly competitive. We saw Tyrese Halliburton have his coming out party. He did the whole Dame time thing. The kid understands kayfabe. He understands entertainment. He knows what the people want, and they want, rivalries. So because of Halliburton and how defensively challenged both of those teams were, they were these like high scoring affairs. Also, this is a thing with the Pacers, but it turned out the Bucks were also defensively challenged. I wasn't sure if like there was something with that matchup, but it turned out the Bucks had other issues all season. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Bucks Pacers.
Okay. I think for my number 3, I'll steal one of yours and go OKC versus Dallas. Just the SGA Luka thing, they already played in the playoffs. I think if OKC is theoretically better, maybe OKC wins a series versus Dallas this year. As a Nuggets fan, don't want to play the same teams over and over in the playoffs, but as a fan, I would like to see OKC and Dallas play again, another playoff series. That would be fun just to see how that shakes out.
My next one is an old favorite. I'm going to go with Nuggets Lakers. These two teams have history that predates both of their cores, with the multiple times that the Nuggets and Lakers had met each other in the playoffs years before. We had Kobe versus Melo, etc. The current cores are obviously a bit of a mismatch, with LeBron entering what would be really like the end stage of a career for most basketball players, if not already done. But let's say like past his prime, not entering, like he is past his prime, but he's still obviously a very good NBA player. He's an all NBA caliber player. Because of the two very competitive playoff series between these teams, very competitive sweeps, gentlemen sweeps, there are narratives galore. Every time that the Lakers come close to winning or win, in the case of the one that they got in this last year's playoffs, there's all these stories about like, what more can the Lakers do to like put more around LeBron so that he can win? And then I'm just like, hey, what about Anthony Davis? Because even LeBron said that Anthony Davis has to be their best player if they are going to win a title, another title. And yet he keeps getting soundly outplayed by Nikola Jokic, even in series where he's not at his best, as the last one, I would argue. So I'm going to go Lakers Nuggets. It's also really good because the Nuggets never blow anybody out. So all those games are down to the wire.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a preemptive one. Oh, this is kind of stupid, but I'm going to pick 2 Denver ones and 1-2. I'm going to do Denver versus Dallas.
Wait, you're going to go 1-2 with Denver? Okay.
Yeah. I think there's a chance that things get more heated with Dallas and Denver this season. Maybe they match up in the playoffs this year.
I just think Jokic and Luka have too much respect for each other to actually trash talk. And Kyrie's not really like a trash talker, and neither's Jamal, is the thing. So like you need for there to be an existing narrative outside, because the players aren't going to give it to you in that particular matchup, I think.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm preempting this because I don't think there's enough there yet. But last year we had the like Kyrie shot we lost to.
Right.
I do think maybe the respect between Luka and Jokic will make this a juicy rivalry because they are both so good, and like maybe 1-2 theoretically you could argue in the MVP race. Maybe it's a friendly rivalry. Rivalries don't have to be bloody.
Ooh, that's not what the people come here for. We're talking about putting butts in seats and getting eyeballs on screens, Will. We need outrage and anger.
The thing is, I'm not picking the Lakers because I think most of the rivalries are said and done. Boston already won
because they're not good.
Yeah, Boston won the extra banner. The Nuggets keep destroying the Lakers. That's over with. The Lakers don't want anything to do with the Nuggets anymore. They're going to avoid them.
I'm sure they don't.
Uh, and the Steph thing, like both of those teams are kind of not that good. So maybe it's a fun rivalry, LeBron versus Steph, but also like
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just
We
don't
want the
care
teams to
about
be
it
more
anymore.
evenly matched. They don't necessarily both have to be like great, but they have to be like good.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see how Denver takes some of these matchups with the top teams in the West. I think that you can always tell when the guys are particularly locked in because they want to send a message. And I just keep going back to both of the games against Boston last year. They were just playing with a different intensity in addition to, any like coaching side adjustments that they made. I remember like we always complain about Jokic having, say, inconsistent aggression. First 5 plays of that game, it's just Jokic posting up Kristaps to show like this guy can't guard me and force Boston to change their strategy. And Jamal like went off in that game, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that I'll be interested to see how they take the top teams in the West. Also, it's going to be a different atmosphere than it was at the beginning of last season, say when they actually played OKC early and kind of thrashed them in that game. But they played Minnesota early and seemed to not take that game as seriously as they did, say, in game 80 when they beat Minnesota toward the end of the series or the end of the season, right? Once they knew like, oh, this is like a good team. We're at home. We want to send a message. I'm curious to see how they take these games against OKC, Dallas, and Minnesota, Memphis as well, because they're going to have not just everybody back, but a different core because they've had some guys leave since Memphis was kind of at its peak of 52. How many games they won when they were the 2 seed a couple of years ago? They're slightly different now, so they're going to be wanting to send a message as well with Ja basically having a year off.
Yeah.
With his suspension and then the injuries. So that's what makes rivalries good, right? When both sides want to send a message. I don't know, I'll go because I think I've got the best one here, and it's like a sneaky good rivalry hiding in plain sight because the NBA actually did give some airtime to Warriors King, and maybe I am biased because I live in the Bay Area, but let me tell you, those two teams do not like each other. Mike Brown, like I've talked about in the past, knows that Warriors team inside and out and takes advantage of their weaknesses with like a brutal aggression. He is relentless in how he attacks Golden State's weaknesses, and Golden State takes advantage of Sacramento's weaknesses, particularly defensively, which is why these games are always so high scoring. They are always so fast and so fun. They come down to the wire. It's Clutch King Fox, who actually won the Clutch Award, versus Steph Curry, who did he win the Clutch Player of the Year last year, or did it go to DeMar DeRozan?
I think Steph won.
So we've got two Clutch Kings sitting in the Bay Area that play each other 4 times every year.
There could be some buzzer beaters.
Yes, exactly. One of those times should absolutely be on NBA Rivals Week, and this is the one that I think the NBA absolutely got right. No notes from me.
I should have had Golden State Sacramento too, now that I think about it. But
that's what I thought you were going to do.
But, well, to be honest, I just didn't really know how those teams felt about each other. Like, I knew they just had the, play-in game where the Warriors got eliminated, but I didn't know if they, really cared about Sacramento or not. But you just enlightened me on that, so there you go. That's a great one. But because I've already chosen, I'm now forced to go Denver, Minnesota as number 1.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, when you say you already chose...
I already chose number 2, Denver, Dallas, so I'm not going to change that. But I think going from descending order, because I didn't write this out ahead of time, it's almost like those games that people play where they rank these, and where they throw out
without
random
knowing
stuff.
what's coming next. Yeah.
So now I got stuck with Denver v Dallas number 2, which probably isn't the best rivalry.
Your own brain, Will.
But I'm definitely going Denver versus Minnesota. I don't care if the national audience doesn't care about this as much as I do. They had 2 playoff series back-to-back years. I said at the time whoever won that series last playoffs was going to win the championship. Obviously, that didn't happen because Boston was ahead of both those teams. And, yeah, there's just so much there with the Tim Connolly and the elimination games now we have this 7-game series where we blew the lead. Anthony Edwards at the time was being discussed as like the next Michael Jordan and the next best player in the league at that time when
Yeah,
they were
right.
up. They got talked about as the best defense in the last 30 years, whatever the hell that was. So I think it's kind of a battle of the Titans a little bit with Jokic versus Ant versus Gobert versus Cat. The fact that Minnesota didn't win the title probably lowers the heat of this rivalry down from a national perspective because people are going to care more about like the big stars still. Not that these teams don't have big stars, but just they're not the typical stars.
Yeah, no, I think I generally agree with that. I'm gonna be honest. The Minnesota Timberwolves probably don't want to play the Nuggets again.
I don't think
Like
either
that
team wants to
series
play each
got
other.
got pretty tight. Yeah,
But I
but
think they're
that's
both
what
still
makes it
so
good.
good that it's still there and it's in play, whereas some other ones are not as like pressing.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely. This is a very present tense, let's say, rivalry. And I do
yeah.
think that it's significant that the NBA gave these two teams a game on Rivals Week. They've got the January 25th slot, and that they all four of their matchups are going to be on national TV this season. Like I said, Adam Silver agrees with you, Will.
Yeah, well,
uh,
out of our list, we only have, I think, two matchups that are actually on the existing rivalry week slate, which is
that's right.
your Warriors versus Kings and my Denver versus Minnesota. Well, that's it for that segment and our show. Is there anything else you want to throw in there?
No, that was all. I've had a really good time going over the NBA schedule, and I want the people to comment. First, I want everyone to say rivalry week 3 times fast. And then I want you to comment below who you think has a better NBA Rivals Week slate.
Yeah,
And your
and
will.
any ones that we missed that you want to watch.
Oh, yeah, that too. We want to hear from the people.
Yes. But in the meantime, like, subscribe, and share. Hit the notification bell. Leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening on or watching. And follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We'll still try to be putting shorts up when we can. And check out our new Clips channel on What's in a Game NBA Clips. And remember, winning is fun and losing sucks.